charged with stealing snacks. A young girl sat in silence until Jasmine Crockett stood up, walked to her, and reminded everyone what justice is supposed to look like. Nobody expected her to speak. Not in that way. Not at that moment. It was just after 2 p.m. on a Wednesday inside a juvenile courtroom in Dallas. Fluorescent lights cast a cold glare on everything. On the judge's bench, the scratched wooden seats, and the faces that looked like they'd been here too many times to care. Courtroom 3B wasn't where stories began. It was where they stalled, suffocated, under paperwork and procedure. Then came the soft voice from the defense table. I wasn't stealing, I was just hungry. The judge paused, lips still forming the next line in her script. The room shifted. Even the clerk lifted her head from the file. Talia, barely 13, sat small in a chair far too big for her. Her hoodie was pulled halfway over her head. The sleeves swallowed her wrists. Her sneakers were worn, one lace tied in a knot, the other dragging. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just said it, like it was the only truth she had left. In the back row, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett leaned forward. She hadn't planned to speak today. She was just there to observe. To take notes for a report she was drafting on youth incarceration and public defense failures in Texas. But something about that voice, how thin it sounded, how sure, cut through the noise of routine. Across the room, the prosecutor didn't look, moved. He was already turning the page on his clipboard. A case of petty theft, snacks, bottled water, and a sandwich from a gas station. Not even $20 worth. But the state called it theft with intent. The public defender at Talia's side looked just as worn out as his client. He shifted in his seat, half whispering, Talia, don't talk right now, let me. But Jasmine was already standing. Your Honor, may I speak? The judge raised an eyebrow. She knew who Jasmine was. Most people in that courthouse did. Some admired her. Some called her a troublemaker with too many opinions, but nobody ignored her. Go ahead, Ms. Crockett, the judge said, cautious. Jasmine walked slowly to the front, her heels echoing across the tile. She didn't look at the audience. She looked straight at the girl. Talia, can I ask you something? She said gently. When's the last time you had a full meal? The girl shrugged. It wasn't an attitude, it was the kind of shrug that said she'd lost count. Yesterday, 2 days ago, Jasmine asked. Talia looked down. Saturday, she whispered. It was Wednesday. That meant 4 days of mostly nothing. The judge looked down at her file. No mention of that. Jasmine turned back to the bench. Your Honor, this child didn't commit a crime. She reacted to starvation. There's a difference. The prosecutor cleared his throat. Representative Crockett, with all due respect, we have a process here. I'm aware, she snapped, not breaking eye contact, and I'm aware that processes don't feed children. The judge leaned back, studying Jasmine like someone deciding whether to intervene or just let it play out. But the courtroom wasn't watching the judge anymore. They were watching Jasmine and Talia and the space between them. That's when Jasmine stepped closer to the defense table. She crouched down to Talia's level. Their conversation wasn't loud, but it didn't have to be. Where do you live? Jasmine asked. Sometimes my mom's car. Sometimes a lady lets us stay the night. Not a lot, Talia replied, eyes darting. Your mom with you now? Talia nodded. She is outside. She didn't want to come in. Jasmine glanced toward the courtroom door. Then she looked back at the judge. I'd like to cover her bail, she said, and I'd like permission to escort her to a shelter that can provide food and stability tonight. Silence. Heavy, awkward, and real. The judge blinked. That's unusual. Not illegal, Jasmine said. Just human. The judge sighed. Bail is set at $100. Jasmine pulled out her wallet right there. But it wasn't the payment that shook people. It was what she did next. Jasmine Crockett didn't grow up with power. She grew up in Tyler, Texas. not the polished, picture-perfect part. The side of town where the buses broke down, the grocery stores, locked up early, and kids learned fast how to live with less. Her mom cleaned houses during the day and waitressed on weekends. Her dad drove a tow truck until his back gave out. Jasmine used to read court documents for fun, just to understand what kept her uncles cycling in and out of jail. By the time she was 12, she already knew how the world treated poor people, especially poor black families. She saw it in the way teachers gave up on certain kids, in the way neighbors disappeared after one mistake, in the way judges treated survival like rebellion. That's why she became a lawyer. Not because she loved the law, because she hated how it was used. By the time she was 35, Jasmine had defended more than 200 clients who couldn't afford their own attorney. One of them was a teenage boy named Reggie who got arrested for skipping school. He told her, "If I stay in class, I won't eat. If I leave, I get cuffed. I can't win." That haunted her. Still does. She ran for office because she was tired of playing defense. She wanted to rewrite the rules. And even though Congress kept her flying back and forth to D.C., she made time for courtrooms like 3B in Dallas. Not to smile for cameras, not to shake hands, to watch, to listen, to remind herself what her job was really about. So on that Wednesday, when she heard Talia's voice crack the silence with that one line, "I was just hungry," it didn't feel random. It felt like something in her blood recognized the sound. She'd heard it before, just not out loud. When Jasmine was 14, she and her little sister once went nearly 2 days without food. Their mom had picked up a temp job that didn't pay out until Friday. The fridge held half a jug of expired milk, mustard packets, and some ice cubes. Jasmine made toast from freezer-burned bread and told her sister it was fancy. That memory sat in her chest like a brick. So when she saw Talia, tiny, in that oversized hoodie, her stomach growling louder than her voice, Jasmine didn't see a criminal. She saw herself years ago just hungrier, quieter, and alone. After she paid the bail, Jasmine didn't walk back to her seat. She turned toward the hallway. Then she stopped and looked over her shoulder. She said her mom's outside. She said to the judge, "I'd like to speak to her too, if that's allowed." The judge nodded slowly. "Do what you need to do, Representative." The courtroom stayed frozen for a second longer. Papers in midair, pens paused, heads slightly tilted as if everyone had realized they'd missed something important. A moment later, the wooden door creaked open. Jasmine stepped into the hall, her assistant trailing behind. There, leaning against the far wall, was a woman with tired eyes and a crushed paper cup in her hand. "Mrs. Allen?" Jasmine asked. The woman looked up, startled. "Yeah, that's me. I'm Jasmine Crockett. I just spoke with your daughter." She blinked a few times. "Is she in trouble?" She was hungry. Mrs. Allen rubbed her face. "We've been trying. I didn't think it'd go this far." Jasmine nodded. "Let's talk." They sat on a bench near the vending machine. Mrs. Allen told her everything. How they'd been evicted 2 months ago, how the shelters were full, how she'd been trying to find work cleaning offices but kept missing interviews because she didn't have bus money, and how Talia had insisted on going into that gas station while her mom waited in the parking lot, thinking she'd just ask for a bottle of water. "She didn't tell me she took anything until we saw the cop behind us," Mrs. Allen said, eyes glassy. "I told her to stay calm. She just kept saying, 'Mama, I'm sorry, I was hungry,' over and over." Jasmine didn't take notes. She just listened. And for once, Mrs. Allen didn't feel like she had to explain her whole life to be believed. But what mattered next wasn't just hearing the story. It was what Jasmine chose to do with it. Talia had been sleeping in the back seat of her mother's Honda Civic for 11 nights straight. The windows didn't roll all the way up anymore. They stuffed newspaper into the cracks to keep the cold out. Most nights, they parked in the same corner of the church lot on Marilla Street in South Dallas. The Daegu pastor had caught them once, but instead of kicking them out, he left a note on the windshield. Stay safe. Water behind the building. Talia didn't tell anyone that part. She didn't want people thinking they were pitiful. School wasn't an option. Her mom had pulled her out weeks ago, hoping to avoid CPS or questions from counselors. Talia didn't mind. She hated sitting in a classroom where kids whispered about her clothes and teachers looked at her like she was a walking burden. When she got hungry, it felt like her head was stuffed with cotton. She'd close her eyes and imagine eating a real dinner. Cornbread, fried chicken, mac and cheese that didn't come from a box, but that's all it was. Imagination. That morning, her mom whispered, "I'll figure something out today, baby. Just hold tight." But something never came, just more waiting. They parked behind a Valero gas station just before noon. Her mom sat behind the wheel, head resting on the steering wheel, trying to work up the nerve to go inside and ask the cashier if he could spare anything from the expired bin. Talia didn't wait. She stepped out quietly, zipped her hoodie and went inside. There was a rotating sandwich rack near the back, ham and cheese marked down. She grabbed one, then a small water, then a sleeve of peanut butter crackers. She knew it added up to about $7.34 with tax she'd counted before, but she didn't have anything to pay with, and asking. She was tired of hearing no, so she walked past the register like she'd paid. 2 steps from the door, a man's voice shouted, "Hey!" She bolted. By the time the police cruiser caught up to them 6 blocks away, Talia had already shoved the sandwich into her mom's bag. The officer wasn't gentle. He handcuffed her, even though she barely weighed 90 pounds. She didn't cry when he read her the charges. She didn't speak, not until she was in that courtroom. That courtroom where her feet barely touched the floor and grown-ups talked like she was a spreadsheet. That courtroom where everything felt cold except for the voice of the woman who knelt down and asked, "When's the last time you had a full meal?" Talia had no idea who Jasmine Crockett was. She just knew someone had finally looked her in the eye and didn't flinch. When Jasmine came back into the courtroom after talking to her mother, she walked straight over to Talia again. "Hey," she said, "I spoke with your mom. Are you okay with coming with me for a little bit? Just until we get you both somewhere better." Talia hesitated. "Can my mom come?" "She's already packing up the car," Jasmine replied. "She's coming too." Something cracked in Talia's throat. It wasn't a sob. It wasn't even a sound. But it made her chest shake. Jasmine reached out a hand. Talia stared at it. Her hands were dry, the nails bitten down. She hadn't held anyone's hand in a long time. She reached back. The bail paperwork didn't take long. A court officer asked Jasmine twice if she was sure. She didn't answer. She just signed. Outside, the Civic waited in the lot, engine running. Talia's mom sat in the passenger seat, blinking against the sun. She looked up as they approached, unsure whether to smile or cry. Jasmine slid into the driver's seat. "We're gonna make a couple stops," she said. "Food first, then a place to sleep. That sounds all right?" No one answered. But Talia reached for the sandwich Jasmine had brought with her. She didn't even unwrap it. She just held it. But the ride to the shelter would reveal more than Jasmine expected. About Talia, her mother, and what they were truly up against. The car was quiet for the first few minutes. Talia sat in the back seat, cradling the sandwich in her lap, like it might vanish if she let go. Her mother, Patrice Allen, stared out the window, her hand gripping the side of the door. Jasmine drove without turning on the radio. She didn't need sound. She needed space, enough space for them to breathe. After a while, she glanced at the rearview mirror. "You sure you don't want to eat that now?" she asked softly. Talia didn't answer right away. Then she whispered, "If I eat too fast, it hurts my stomach." That landed hard. Jasmine nodded once, then returned her eyes to the road. She knew the shelter on Ross Avenue wasn't fancy. Metal beds, plastic trays, flickering lights. but they had warm meals and real pillows. It would be enough. At least for tonight. Halfway there, Patrice broke the eye. Silence. Why are you helping us? Her voice cracked in the middle. You don't even know us. Jasmine kept her hands on the wheel. Because I do. Patrice frowned. What do you mean? I know what it's like to hear your stomach before your thoughts. I know what it's like to feel like you're failing your child when you're doing everything you can. Patrice turned her head, jaw clenched. She didn't say anything, but Jasmine saw the tears sliding down her cheek. A few blocks from the shelter, Jasmine pulled into a Whataburger drive-thru. Y'all allergic to anything? She asked. Talia shook her head. Patrice exhaled slowly. No, but she likes chicken strips. They pulled up to the window with 2 large bags in the back seat and a tray of sodas between them. Jasmine handed it back to Talia. You can eat now, she said. No rush. Just know it's yours. Talia nodded, her eyes full. She took one bite, then another. Then she stopped and offered a piece to her mom. Patrice waved it away. Eat, baby. You need it. Jasmine didn't interrupt. She just let them have that moment. At the shelter, Jasmine parked and turned to face them. They've got a family room open. Tonight, she said. They're expecting you. If anything feels off, call me. This number won't change. She handed Patrice a small white card. Her personal number was written in black ink. Patrice stared at it. Are you serious? I don't do this for show, Jasmine said. You're not invisible to me. They stepped out slowly, like they weren't sure the ground would hold them. A shelter worker greeted them at the door. Talia looked back once before heading inside. That could have been the end of it. Jasmine could have driven away, written a few lines in her report, mentioned the case in a policy briefing, and checked it off as a win. But she didn't. She parked down the street and sat in silence. She thought about all the times she'd heard stories like Talia's, kids swept up in the legal system because they didn't have lunch money, clean shoes, or someone to explain their worth. She thought about the boys she used to defend, who never got a second chance. The girls who disappeared after the court dates, names lost in records. She thought about her own mother, scraping together meals, pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. Her phone buzzed in the cup holder, a text from her aide. You missed your meeting with the city coordinator. Should I reschedule? She typed back one word. No. Then she got out of the car, walked back toward the shelter, and asked to speak with the intake supervisor. Inside, the room smelled like cafeteria trays and bleach. The walls were covered in old flyers and chipped paint. But Talia and Patrice had a mattress and a door that locked. Jasmine spoke quietly to the staff. I want to cover their meals for the next 2 weeks. Also, if there's space in the family resource program, put them on the top of the list. The supervisor blinked, surprised. You want a receipt? Jasmine shook her head. I want them safe. But the next morning, chewing, something unexpected would put everything Jasmine thought she knew to the test. By 7:45 the next morning, Jasmine Crockett was back in her office at the District Field Center on South Irby Street, sorting through a stack of case files and policy drafts. Her assistant Lena stood near the door, tapping her pen nervously. You've got the commissioner's call at 9, press at 10, and a sit-down with the education equity team right after lunch, Lena recited. Jasmine nodded, barely listening. Her mind kept circling back to Talia and Patrice. She told herself that giving them one safe night would be enough, but it didn't sit right. Something about that girl, the way she didn't flinch, the way she didn't cry, made her wonder what else they were carrying. At 8:15, Jasmine's phone rang. Not the office line, her personal cell. She answered on instinct. Crockett. Hi, this is Carla from the Ross Avenue shelter. You said to call if anything happened. I wasn't sure if this counted, but you might want to come. Jasmine didn't ask questions. She just said on my way, grabbed her coat, and left Lena mid-sentence. 15 minutes later, she pulled into the lot. The sky was still low and gray, and the air smelled faintly like fried onions from a taco truck down the street. Inside the shelter lobby, Carla waved her over. "They're both okay," she said quickly. "Just something came up during check-in this morning." Jasmine followed her to the side room. Patrice sat hunched over a metal table, eyes sunken, hands trembling. Talia was by the vending machine, staring blankly at a packet of Skittles. She didn't look up when Jasmine walked in. "What happened?" Jasmine asked. Carla handed her a manila folder. "We ran Patrice's name through the database like we're required to. Turns out she's got an open bench warrant in Oklahoma." Jasmine flipped through the pages. Unpaid parking tickets. Failure to appear. One bounced check. All from 4 years ago. "They wouldn't extradite for this," Jasmine muttered. "No," Carla said, "but it means we can't keep her here until it's resolved." "Policy." Patrice finally spoke. "I didn't even know it was still active. I swear, I moved down here to get away from all that. I believe you." "So who?" Jasmine said. "Let me make some calls." She stepped out into the hallway, thumbed through her contacts, and called a public defender she trusted. Then the city clerk. Then a non-profit she knew in Tulsa. One by one, the pieces started to move. She returned an hour later with a solution. "There's a temporary waiver we can file. If we can get someone to sponsor you through an emergency shelter clause, you can stay put for now. I'll front the cost. We'll get your paperwork squared away." Patrice blinked. "Why are you doing this?" Jasmine didn't answer right away. She looked at Talia instead. "Because I don't want this child losing her mother over a $42 mistake and a missed court date from a lifetime ago." She turned back to Patrice. "This isn't charity. It's justice that doesn't come with a camera crew." Patrice wiped her face and nodded slowly. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Thank you." That afternoon, Jasmine returned to the courtroom where it all began. She didn't have to, but something felt unfinished. She sat in the same back row. The same prosecutor was at the bench. A new case, different kid, same charge. This time, a boy named Corey was accused of stealing a blanket from a Walmart. Jasmine watched the exchange between the boy, the judge, and a defender who barely knew his name. When the prosecutor mentioned theft with intent, Jasmine stood. "Your Honor, permission to observe as amicus." The judge sighed but nodded. "Ms. Crockett." She walked to the front, looked the boy in the eyes. "You were cold last night." He hesitated, then nodded. She turned to the judge. "Then I'd like to ask the court to stop calling survival a felony." The judge stared at her. No words. The clerk lowered her pen. Someone in the audience whispered, "That's her, the one from yesterday." But Jasmine wasn't done raising questions, because behind every stolen item was a system nobody wanted to fix. The shelter cafeteria was nearly empty by dinner time. A few older men sat hunched over trays, mumbling to themselves. One woman folded napkins at the corner table like it gave her purpose. Talia picked at the mashed potatoes with the back of her spoon. Patrice sat across from her, staring at a poster taped to the wall. Resources available. GED, job skills, clothing closet. Ask a case manager. It wasn't home, but it wasn't the Civic either. That night, they were moved to a small private room with a twin bed, a fold-out cot, and a plastic drawer filled with donated hygiene products. There was a door they could lock, and for the first time in almost 2 weeks, Talia slept without her shoes on. Meanwhile, across town, Jasmine sat in the kitchen of her apartment, laptop open, microwave burrito half-eaten beside her. The press had started to catch wind of her courtroom appearance. Someone must have posted a clip online. Because a local news anchor had emailed her any interest in going on air to talk about the incident. She didn't respond. That wasn't what this was for. Instead, she sent a message to her team asking for numbers. How many juvenile theft cases involved food or basic necessities in the last 6 months? The data wasn't surprising, just depressing. Out of 213 petty theft cases in Dallas County, 82 involved stolen food, hygiene items, or blankets. 82. She pressed her palms into her eyes and leaned back in the chair. Then her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Miss Crockett?" It was Talia. Her voice was small again, like the courtroom. "They gave me your card. I hope it's okay." "Of course it's okay," Jasmine said, sitting up straighter. "How are you?" "Okay, I guess. They got me new socks." She paused. "I'm not used to cleaning socks." Jasmine smiled, though her chest tightened. "How's your mom?" "She's filling out some paper things. For jobs, I think. She seems tired, but not the bad kind." That part hit differently. "Good," Jasmine said. "That's good, Talia." There was a pause. Then Talia asked, "Are we still in trouble?" "No," Jasmine answered. "You're not in trouble. You were never the problem, you understand?" Talia didn't reply right away. "Okay," she finally whispered. After they hung up, Jasmine sat there a long time. The next morning she stopped by the shelter again, not for a grand gesture, just to check in. Patrice was in the courtyard, filling out a job application on a clipboard with a dull pencil. Talia sat cross-legged on the concrete, scribbling in a composition notebook. "Y'all eat?" Jasmine asked. "Yeah," Patrice said. "They had eggs and toast." Jasmine nodded. "Good." She reached into her bag and handed Talia a paperback book. The House on Mango Street. Her own copy. Worn edges. Notes in the margins. "I thought you might. Like this?" Talia turned it over in her hands. "It's not a kid's book." "Nope. But it's not too grown either." Talia smiled, just barely. They talked for another 10 minutes. Nothing big. Just small things. Weather, school, music. Jasmine didn't need anything more than that. As she got up to leave, Patrice stood and followed her to the sidewalk. "I didn't think anybody like you still existed," she said. Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "Like me? Somebody who shows up and doesn't need a headline." Jasmine looked out toward the street. Cars passed without slowing down. No cameras, no applause. "I don't want a headline," she said. "I want fewer kids behind glass." Patrice exhaled through her nose and nodded. "We'll be okay." "I know," Jasmine said. She turned, walked to her car, and pulled away. But across the city, conversations had already started in quiet corners, and not everyone was happy about what Jasmine had done. The clip of Jasmine Crockett standing in court beside Talia had reached over 180,000 views in 2 days. No hashtags, no flashy captions, just raw footage caught on someone's phone. It was grainy, unsteady, and real. That's probably why it spread. Something about the way Jasmine knelt to speak with Talia, the way she said, "This isn't theft, this is survival," hit people somewhere deeper than politics. Inside the courthouse, things changed faster than anyone expected. Clerk Denise Taylor, who'd worked behind that bench for 22 years, started looking at case files differently. She noticed how many kids were listed with property valued under $20. She brought it up in the weekly office meeting and got silence in return. The bailiff, Officer Garrison, found himself hesitating before cuffing a 15-year-old caught shoplifting frozen dinners. He still followed orders, but for the first time, he felt a lump in his throat afterward. And Judge Alston, the same one from Talia's hearing, called for a private meeting with the juvenile public defenders. "We're going to start asking questions before we rubber stamp charges," she said. "If a child's stealing food, I want to know why before I sign off." It wasn't a revolution. It wasn't even a policy shift, but it was something. Of course, not everyone was impressed. In a downtown office, Assistant District Attorney Glenn Ramsey sat behind his desk, arms folded, watching the viral clip on repeat. "She made us look soft," he muttered. "Soft and out of touch." His colleague Martin shrugged. "It's a one-off. People will forget by next week." "I won't," Glenn said. "Crockett doesn't get to stand in my courtroom and call us heartless." So he drafted a memo. It wasn't overt, just a reminder to proceed with consistency and avoid exceptions that set impractical precedents. But everyone knew what it meant. Don't make her look good again. The memo made its way through inboxes. Some read it carefully. Some ignored it entirely. But the message lingered. That same day, Jasmine received an email from a local advocacy group. "We saw the clip. Want to speak at our event on food insecurity in youth courts?" She said no, not because she didn't care, but because she didn't want to become the face of something she couldn't fix alone. Instead, she picked up her phone and dialed Director Miller at the Office of Youth Outreach. "We need to talk about the intake process," she said. "There's too much slipping through the cracks. We're labeling kids as criminals before we ever ask if they've eaten." "You're not wrong," Miller admitted, "but you're going to ruffle feathers." "Good," Jasmine replied. "Let them squirm." Meanwhile, at the Ross Avenue shelter, Talia had started reading The House on Mango Street, not fast, not even every day, but enough that she kept it close, folding down corners of the pages she liked. She wrote a short poem in her notebook and showed it to her mom. Patrice teared up. Not because the poem was perfect. It wasn't. But because it sounded like Talia again, the real her. The one who used to sing along to songs in the car before the repo. The one who used to laugh before they stopped having birthdays. One morning, as they stood in line for breakfast, a case manager approached Patrice. "We've got space in the family relocation program," she said. "They'll help with the job placement and transitional housing." Patrice stared for a second, processing the words. "You sure? Someone put in a request on your behalf. Anonymous, but effective." Patrice smiled, wide and shaky. She didn't need to guess who it was. Later that week, they moved into a shared apartment unit with another mother and child. It was small, but the door locked. And there were real dishes in the cabinet. The first night there, Talia asked if they could cook something together. They made pancakes. But while Talia's life was shifting quietly toward light, Jasmine was about to face a new challenge. One that would test everything she thought she stood for. The first thing Talia did in the new apartment was open every cabinet. She wasn't looking for food, though there was some. She just wanted to see the space, see what was hers. She touched the edge of the counter like she didn't believe it was real. The kitchen smelled faintly like old coffee and lemon-scented dish soap. For once, that didn't bother her. It made her feel normal. Her room wasn't big, just a mattress on, a wooden frame, a second-hand desk, and one window that overlooked the parking lot. But she loved it. She taped up 2 pages from her notebook. One was her poem, the other a drawing she'd made of a book with wings. Patrice was already folding clothes into the bottom drawer. She didn't talk much, not because she didn't have anything to say, but because the moment felt sacred and words might ruin it. The social worker had given them a 3-month housing voucher. If Patrice stayed on track with job training and checked in every week, they'd extend it. Jasmine had quietly made sure her name stayed off the paperwork. She didn't want credit, just results. Talia went back to school 2 weeks later. The principal, Mr. Reeves, had a strict zero-tolerance policy, but after a quiet word from a colleague in the district office, he made an exception. He didn't act like he was doing her a favor. He just handed her a schedule and said, "Show up, we'll take it from." There, Talia was,